All right, imagine making split-second decisions where even the smallest mistake can cost you the race or the season. That's the reality inside a Formula One racing team. So today I'm joined by Dan Keyworth. He leads performance technology at McLaren Racing, connecting the factory, the track, and the pit wall with real-time data. While F1 is extreme, the challenges are familiar to many of you. Turning data into decisions, running distributed systems under pressure, and improving technology in real time while ensuring that the systems behind all of that run flawlessly under pressure. So Dan, to start, maybe you can take us inside the walls of McLaren Racing. What does an actual race day look like from a technology perspective?
Well, thanks for having me, Dennis. Great to see you as ever. Look, a race day is the kind of the sharp end and the pinnacle of everything that we do inside McLaren Racing. 1,400 people fighting all the time to get these two cars on track and to be competitive. Technology is really the kind of lifeblood and the underlying weaponry that we use every race and every day here at McLaren to give us the maximum amount of performance. So it is absolutely mission critical to everything we do. I always look at the garage, and actually without the technology lit up, it's quite a sterile environment, and that's when the garage comes to life. And that always makes me and reminds me how important technology is for us as a team. But of course, running that comes with its challenges as well. You know, we're a high octane business. We're running super fast all the time. We've got 10 other competitors on the grid that want to beat us. So we have to give our all the time, and technology is one of the key foundations to our historical success and our future success as well.
So in Formula One, one thing that strikes me is you have to set up a new network, set of systems somewhere in the world, you know, about 26 times a year, and everything has to work flawlessly. You have to be able to communicate a huge amount of data from the track back to your HQ, where you do a lot of the analysis leading up to the race. So it's not just the infrastructure, it's really this need for consistent, reliable service delivery across a very distributed environment that's quite unique. Most of our customers aren't setting up completely new operations, you know, every single weekend during the racing year. So in your role, you're not just leading, you know, systems and teams, you're ensuring that all of these workflows operate under tremendous pressure. Can you talk about how you use tools like Freshservice that have changed the way that you lead those teams and change the way that you make decisions when reliability and all that is just so important?
Yeah, well, you make a good point. Like, we're not just kind of permanently at the edge. We've got this kind of flexible edge that's always going on. So 20 plus races a year. My team actually go to the circuit a week before the event, and we work with the team to build the entire garage from scratch. So we run 3.5 kilometers of cabling. We make sure that all the foundational systems are in place. And then when the team are ready to come in, we drop the two cars in and we drop the mobile data center, the core infrastructure of the garage. And then everything, like I said earlier, kind of comes to life. So all of that is, you know, well coordinated and has to be in sync for us to hit what we call comms check. And comms check is just the point where everyone goes, all systems are ready to go in order for us to start a race weekend. And of course, we're doing everything back at the factory as well. So this isn't just a team of 150 in the field. We've got 30 people in mission control overseeing a race, and we've got a whole bunch of people, you know, behind the scenes as well, analyzing data, doing stuff in real and near time, where technology is super critical to their roles. You know, for us, and the way that we've used Freshservice is really about how we apply simplicity to really something that is actually quite a complex setup that we have. But in order to really kind of debunk the myths of complexity, we've gone, how do we really simplify the way that we provide IT services to the business? How do we react in a way that feels like a pit stop? How do we make sure that our processes are repeatable and consistent every time? And then if we see something, you know, like a technology failure, you know, IT isn't always perfect. So you've always got to be ready to react. It's like, how do we, be more proactive and get ahead of some of that? But also, how do we learn? Like, we're always going to find opportunities to learn every race weekend. We get that from the car, and how do we continue to evolve and develop it? But that doesn't change when it comes to IT systems and the services that we provide to the business as well. There's always an opportunity to learn something new every week.
So I've been to a couple of races, and one of the things that really stood out to me is the cars are basically chock full of sensors and collecting data all the time. And so you've got all this data coming in, but you know the value comes from turning that data into some sort of insight and then ultimately a decision. So what, and you have to do it in pretty much real time or almost real time. What does that environment teach you about building an organization that can move at that speed, where you've got data, systems, workflow, all has to work kind of seamlessly together to actually drive decisions?
Yeah, it's a real complex beast. 300 sensors at the start of the weekend on a Formula One car. It does reduce slightly as you go through each of the sessions, as you get your car dialed in and locked in for qualifying and the race. And that's probably no different to any other business trying to, get their product in the optimal state to go to market, or whatever the analogy might be. But yeah, we collect a huge amount of data, 100,000 parameters of telemetry per second. So this is telling us everything about how the car's behaving, all the different pressures and temperatures that it is experiencing. And we're reacting to those things in real time. So we surface that information in front of the engineers that are there in the garage, so that they can see exactly what's going on Lando and Oscar's cars. We're also streaming that data real time back to mission control, so that everyone can see exactly the same thing. Mission control is a much calmer environment as well. So you can make, I'd say, much more sensible and informed decisions. Not to say we don't do that in the garage, but this is it's a much more stable environment compared to, being in the heat of the moment. So really important that we give both sides of the fence exactly the same information to be able to respond and to react from. But what it teaches me, I think, I've worked in other industries, really is about, yes, there is loads of data, but one thing you've got to do is make sure that it is relevant to the performance that you're going after. Our performance metrics are quite simple, that we want to add lap time to the car and we want to go and score podiums and win races. But applying that level of simplicity to the way that we go racing goes, actually, these are the tools, technologies, and the way we want to present our data that make that job easier for everybody as well. So it's all about getting focused in. It's all about going, what does the true North Star look like, and make sure that we're pointing all of the team towards that.
So I want to talk about continuous improvement. I've heard you say that the team that wins the first couple of races of the year but doesn't get better, by the end of the year, they're not competitive. You have to continuously improve week to week in your sport in order to be at the top of the podium. And help me understand a little bit about, how do you drive that continuous improvement? How do you create an environment where people are learning continuously and then driving improvement into the way that you guys drive and the way the car performs?
Yeah, the rate of innovation is incredible. We make an engineering change every 15 minutes. So this is kind of real time, rapid prototyping and development that's happening. And we're looking for those kind of, where are we finding milliseconds to ultimately translate onto the track? So, we're always fighting for the same currency. And that drives a continuous improvement mindset, because it's, how do you make all these marginal gains in order to ladder up to lap time? But we don't do that through just, through intuition. We're looking at the data through each part of that process. So we design a car, we build it, and then we go racing. And in that kind of design and build phase, there is a number of opportunities to close the loop. We do aerodynamic analysis, where a lot of that lives in the digital world. We then have a physical wind tunnel where we get the first indication of how the car may behave on track. And then we give a digital representation to Lando and Oscar in the driver simulator. So these are all data points that exist. And then, of course, the rubber hits the road at whatever race we're going to. And that's the first real life, full representation of what's happening. And all of those loops get closed in real and near time as well. So we're always evolving and always elevating ourselves. And it's through the mode of survival. Like you say, if you win the first race and you do nothing, you're probably going to be seeing the other cars in front of you by the time you get to Abu Dhabi.
Now, this year, the start of the season, particularly challenging, completely different platform than last year from a technology standpoint. Every number of years, F1 releases essentially a completely new set of rules that govern the car. So the learning must be very intense at this time. Talk a little bit about maybe some of the changes that have happened, and how is the learning developing as the season starts?
Yeah, this is the biggest rule set change I've seen in the decade that I've been here. We obviously had the geometry-based rule change set in 2022, and the introduction of the cost cap as well. So obviously that added a level of dynamic to how the sport went about racing and how it conducted itself. But this has been a complete change of the aerodynamic philosophy of the car, but also the power unit as well. So it's a complete reset. The score of last year no longer matters. Everything gets marked back to zero when you start this season. And we've had to learn, in real time. We've had to hit the track in testing. We had to figure out how the drivers adapt to the car. How do we deploy the most amount of performance from the car, and also compare those reference points, because we've been designing this car for a couple of years, and it's the first time once it hits the track that is the first indication of what you may have seen in the digital world. So it's the first physical reference point. And of course, you then end up back in your own cycle again. It's how do we continue to evolve from that point? Certainly been a challenging start to the season, but it's always optimistic for us. We're always looking forward. We're always looking at how do we add more lap time to the car, and we focus on ourselves, and we focus to the next race.
It's interesting. I read Zach's book, and he talks about that culture of just continuous improvement and how important it is to have the kind of blame-free environment where it's all about, hey, how do we get better? And AI is now coming into the equation, and you've talked about AI as another voice in the room. How is AI showing up in the race environment? How is it showing up in your preparation?
Yeah, firstly, I think to the point of, Zach's an incredible leader when it comes to encouraging us to be brave and move forward all the time. We don't really talk about failure as well. We try to build a culture where it's not a kind of a fail fast culture, it's a learn fast culture. So how do you quickly identify the learning point and the opportunity to be better? You can actually end up in a bit of a spin with failure. That is, if you're always talking about failure, then you might end up manifesting it permanently. So it's a really interesting kind of change in language that we adopt here. But AI is it's a topic everywhere. Certainly from our perspective, it's an accelerator. It's about how do we get more out of the humans that are in this organization already, kind of taking out the laborious in their lives and actually allowing them to be engineers and scientists, which is what their true trade is. So there's a huge amount of operational efficiency that we can deploy rapidly through the use of AI. And that's in many areas, whether that's through kind of traditional business processes and how you optimize that, through to things like software development and how do you harness data in a completely different way. These are all kind of areas that we've explored, but also where we're already seeing a huge amount of benefit, and we're seeing an unlock of performance.
So the environment that you're in, there's a lot of pressure. There's very high standards for performance. You have aerodynamicists, physicists. You have some of the best engineers in the world working in your organization. Tell me a little bit about how you both recruit talent for that type of an environment. How do you evaluate someone coming in and know, hey, this is or this maybe is not the right kind of environment for you? And then once people come in, talk a little about what are your expectations of them culturally in terms of how they operate as a team, which I know is very important to you and to Zach.
Yeah, I think, there are many people that are good in their subject in the world, and there's oodles of talent out there. I think for us, it has to be, they've got to have a winner's mindset. They've got to be culturally in tune with how we go racing at McLaren, which may be slightly different to other teams. And it's got to be a real balance, right? You can sometimes, from my perspective, you can always teach a level of technical skills, but actually cultural and emotional qualities are also, really important. And it's we feel like that's the way that we go racing. And we want to make sure that other people show up and race in the same way that we do. So it kind of makes the selection process easier, because you once you click with people culturally, and you then know that they have got the technical ability, whether at a relative baseline in order to improve from there, or they've already got it. That just makes the recruitment process far more enjoyable, actually.
So just to wrap up, if you had to summarize a couple of lessons that you've learned from Formula One for an enterprise leader, we have customers like New Balance and Nucor Steel and Databricks, all large, high-performance organizations, but very different environments than Formula One. What are some of the lessons that you think apply to the leaders in those organizations as they deal with AI, as they deal with such a fast-moving performance environment, as they're trying to continuously get better?
Yeah, I think what I share, I speak to a lot of technology leaders, particularly ones that work in sport or any kind of other high-performing businesses. What's very clear is they have a very strong narrative around what their win is. And for me, I know exactly what that is. Add lap time to the car. It's genuinely win races and score podiums and ultimately get points, which ladder up to world championships and driver championships as well. So the objective for me is super clear. And what that allows me to do is build all the blocks that I need to put in place from a technology standpoint that support that and ladder up. And of course, that leads into a bunch of performance projects that we're always running that will be in support of the mission. And that's quite simple in nature. But I think if you talk to any business, it's like, you guys need to just really figure out what your win is and get super obsessed by it. And then things start to become clear. It's like, where do we need to get more operationally efficient and robust? Well, that's in IT service management or other areas. But then looking in like, so your broader portfolio of technology projects, like actually, this doesn't contribute to the mission. So why are we doing it? And it's okay to say no. It's okay to pause, stop, or get rid of it. And these are really brave things to do. But actually, it's always it's a really good reflection to reset and go, what is my win? Is everything I show up today to do in support of that? And if it's not, it doesn't have a place at the table.
That's so important, especially with things moving so fast. Projects that you may have thought were priorities 9 months ago, a year ago, you look at what you can do now with the tools that are out there. They really might not be the priorities that you should be pursuing. I think that's a really important lesson. So, Dan, thank you so much. Fascinating conversation. Good look inside how technology powers a Formula One team, not just a team, but the Constructors Championship, the home of the world champion. And what stands out to me is that even in an environment that moves at extreme speed, the fundamentals really still matter. You have to have good access to data and accurate data, reliable systems that work, systems that are not overcomplicating people's lives. You need teams that trust each other, a culture that drives consistency and a North Star of where you're going. So, Dan, thank you for joining me. And to our listeners, we'll see you next time when we have more insights from leaders who are really shaping the future of technology. Thank you.